Am I the asshole for telling my wife to stop acting like she gave birth? Me, 34 male, and my wife, 23 female, have been together for almost 12 years. Around 4 years ago, my wife gave birth to our first daughter, Cassandra. This was definitely a pleasant surprise, as my wife had been told constantly throughout her life that she could not and would never have children. However, after a consistent 13 years of trying, we finally had our baby. Cassie, our daughter, has been the light of our lives ever since. Despite this, my wife is always complaining. And I don't mean like, oh, I hate picking up all these toys, or there's so much laundry to be done. I mean complaining that her back hurts, or how she can't squat anymore, like she just gave birth despite our child being born literally 4 years ago. For the first year or so, I didn't think much of it, just occasionally shushed her or told her to focus on the joy of finally having the kid. Now I'm having to hold back yelling at her because of how uncomfortable her complaints are making me. And not only me, but they're making both her and my families awkward as well. And here's where my question of am I the asshole comes in. The other day, my brother and sister-in-law came to visit, and last second my mother decided to join. No problem, I love my family and enjoy spending as much time as I possibly can with them. I am such a family man. My wife took the time to prepare dinner for all of us, as I never learned to cook, and my mother is getting older. My family and I sat around the table and caught up with each other, but the whole time I could hear my wife grunting and mumbling to herself from the kitchen. I tried desperately to ignore it in hopes to not make a scene, though I could tell it was starting to affect my brother and sister-in-law, as they started awkward laughing and were cutting our small talk even smaller. My own mother seemed off-put as well. That's when my wife finally walked into the room with our food, placed down the meals in the center of the table, but not before making a comment on how sorry she was for the wait, because her back had been hurting extra lately. All thanks to Candy, she had said, referencing our daughter. Oh, the joys and pains of children. She laughed. And suddenly, I just couldn't take it anymore. I stood up, shouting at her to shut her mouth and to stop acting like she gave birth to our baby, as our baby was born quite literally years ago, and there's just no way every single house chore could be making her ache like that. So she must be faking it as a way to garner attention from my family. My wife looked at me in shock, but I meant what I said. When I looked back down at my family, they all refused to make eye contact and were strangely straight-faced. That's how I knew they agreed with me. My wife left the room, and shortly after, my mother silently followed. My brother and his wife didn't say anything, just started eating quietly. Personally, I was too peeved to eat and simply went to get a fresh beer from the fridge. I can't help but feel although I ruined dinner with the family. I already know I wasn't in the wrong for saying that to her, obviously, but am I the asshole for saying it before we could eat our dinner? Am I the asshole for not donating to a sick kid? So everybody knows whenever you buy something at most stores, they ask you if you'd like to round up or donate $1 to some hospital, research, something or other. And at the very least, they have a jar next to the register you can put some money into. This is especially apparent around Christmas time, the holiday of giving, right? They even have people outside begging shoppers to donate. Well, about a week ago, I was doing some last-minute Christmas shopping for a few friends, casually walking by every place to donate. I had the money, but I was more concerned with not showing up to my friends' parties empty-handed. Shopping goes by relatively event-free, and I wind up at the cash register, ready to purchase. The cashier does her typical, "Would you like to round up to an even number? The money goes to a children's hospital down the road." Oh, I'm well aware. I walk by it every day to work, a grim reminder of how good my life is compared to theirs. I shake my head no, and she gives me a sort of judgmental look that I'm already put off by. And not to mention just the act of shopping alone and figuring out the cheapest gifts to get people has already put me in a bad mood. I hold in my indignance and continue waiting for the bagger to bag my items. I live in one of those states where people actually prioritize others and don't force labor on the casual consumer. Right before I'm about to leave, the cashier girl asks once more if I'd like to donate. "Just $1, she says. "Can even be a quarter, anything counts," with her cheery fake customer service smile. Finally getting to my wit's end and just wanting to get out of there. I tell her that the hospital will probably steal my money anyways if their business didn't do it first. I tell her that the doctors are still gonna work to save people's lives even without funding, and that they probably didn't even need it. They just want to make sick children t-shirts saying, "I donated to the cause," or some BS. Eventually, I tell her that I'd rather just donate to a kid directly, get him some apple juice or something. After saying this, I see her eyes nervously dart to the person standing in the checkout line behind me. I turn to see a mother with her hand on her kid's shoulder. Her kid, a young boy probably around 6 or 7, is completely bald with redding eyes and pasty skin. He's wearing one of the previously mentioned sick children t-shirts with the name of my local children's hospital on it. I've never been so bewildered in my entire life. Talk about timing. Unfortunately for him though, it will be a cold day in hell before he gets my precious cash. The mother is looking at me expectantly, and after a quick glance, the cashier appears to be sweating bullets. I turn back, grab my few bags from the bagger's hands, and head to my car. Children's hospital in plain sight. Am I the asshole for not donating to that kid even though he was technically only there right place, right time, and I made no promises? Am I the asshole for getting mad at an elderly lady who wouldn't take no for an answer? I, 23 male, was taking the subway earlier this morning, and as I got on, the only seat available was the handicapped one. No problem, still a seat, and I have autism anyways, so I took my seat, hopped on my phone, and relaxed. A couple stops later, an old lady gets on, hunched over and walking with a cane. Just seeing her, I already knew there would be issues. She just looked the type. She hobbles over to me and simply stops in front of my feet, like she's expecting me to get up or move. There's no other seats available still, so I understand why she may want my seat, but clearly I'm already sitting here, and just because my disability isn't visible doesn't mean I don't have one. Nevertheless, she just kept standing there, me staring up at her with a very "I'm not gonna move, bro" expression. Even still, this conundrum kept on for way too long, and eventually I just mustered up a very intense "no." She still stood there. The train's about to start moving. I tell her, "I'm not getting up. You're gonna get flung, lady. Go hold on to something." She squints like she's judging me, and for what? I refuse to move. My trip is much longer than hers. I've already been here for at least a half hour. I'm not holding on to a dirty, grimy pole for the next hour. She could just wrap her cane around it and be fine, so what's the big deal? Though I still have my dignity, and I'm not about to cuss out an elderly lady on a subway. But by this point, I'm reaching my limit. Eventually, she huffs at me and turns around. I throw up a middle finger behind her back, and the guy next to me looks at me in shock. Surely he saw that encounter, and maybe he's right. The middle finger may have been too much. What do you think, Reddit? Am I the asshole? Am I the asshole for cutting off a struggling friend? I, 19 female, have a friend, 18 male, who I only met this year. We met way earlier in the year and have become very close in the time since. Not like it made much of a difference as we hit it off straight off the bat. We had all the same interests and passions. Video games, music, we both played in a band, academics, and we're both interested in the same job. However, it was very apparent since the beginning that he had a crush on me. He invited me to a party, telling me we were going as friends to go and hang out with his friends, but he told all of his friends that I was his date. Going so far to the point that a couple of his friends thought we had been dating for quite some time before this. Keep in mind, we had just met about 2 weeks prior. While at this party, he told the friend that I had brought along that he liked me, which my friend told me about. I never brought it up as I'm very socially awkward and hate confrontation, but thinking back on it, I probably should have just told him straight away that I wasn't interested. The problem seemed to solve itself though. As time went on, he stopped being so flirtatious with me and inviting me out on carefully disguised dates. He began to treat me as just one of his friends, and we started hanging out in mutual friend groups together. Eventually, when he stopped trying to impress me, he started opening up to me. His mom was very emotionally abusive. He had been homeless for some time. His dad wasn't in the picture, and he had been diagnosed with depression and kicked out of his band. There was more stuff, like his academics falling behind, etc. I immediately began thinking of all the ways I could help him. I started doing his homework for him, same school, introducing him to my friends as his old ones either cut him off or were just horrible people I didn't feel he should be around. I was tutoring him in multiple subjects, playing games with him after school to keep him in high spirits as best I could. But despite all I did, he continued to tell me how miserable he was on a constant basis. He would change every conversation into a vent, and as much as I wanted to be there for him, it was starting to grate on me. I was sad talking to him, and sad after talking to him. He would send me voice recordings of his family berating and or yelling at him. Pictures of his grades slipping, Screenshots of his conversations with his friends calling him stupid and dogging on him, text conversations of girls rejecting him. I didn't know what to do other than just continue to be there whenever he needed me, help him get good grades and such since he seemed to tie a lot of his self-worth to his academics. I found out he was flirting with a bunch of the resident mean girls, like the type of girls that were calling him disgusting and dumb but still leading him on. He started hanging out with his old rude friends again instead of mine, and he seemed to be taking after them, saying slurs that he couldn't, smoking and getting high, it's illegal here, insulting and cussing out innocent people, some of which were just passing by. I started to distance myself, still somewhat sending him positivity whenever I could. But about 2 months ago, he turned his insults and belittling towards me for weeks, making fun of me every chance he got, and not in the joking friend way. Then, a month ago, he confessed his feelings for me. For whatever reason, it was just my final straw. I rejected and cut him off. I felt a lot better, honestly. I wasn't nearly as miserable as I was just simply seeing him and knowing he was about to rant to me. That fact alone also makes me feel so extremely guilty. I found out he's getting high every day now, dating one of those girls who's always mean to him, and I can literally hear her yelling at him constantly. He's failed all his classes. I feel like I should have just held on a little bit longer. Try to convince him into therapy or something. If I had accepted his confession and dated him, maybe I could have helped in some way until he didn't need me anymore. Especially since I knew him before he became like this. I feel like it's my fault, or at the very least I could have done more to prevent it. Am I the asshole? Am I the asshole for kicking a small child down the stairs? He really pissed me off.